Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure. My name is Scott Muller. It is my pleasure to welcome everyone to this webinar on Mobilizing Investment Program. This program is a collaboration that is led by South-South North and includes the key participation from CDKN, the Climate and Development Knowledge Network, and the LEDS Global Partnership. The Mobilizing Investment Program, I think you're aware, is funded by the International Climate Initiative of the German Federal Ministry for the Environment, Nature Conservation, and Nuclear Safety. It is my honor here to join my colleague, Ms. Edna Odhiambo, who is Professor of Climate Law and Land Use Law at the University of Nairobi School of Law, as well as Ms. Carren Nasiaki Kirungu, who's the head of county land reclamation in West Pokot County, and Mr. Anam Moturi, who's the head of the town environment and climate change management in the county government of Nyamira. If we could jump to the next slide, Siobhan. Now, the multinational project Mobilizing Investment for NDC implementation is really focused on diverse interventions in 7 different countries: Bangladesh, Dominican Republic, Ethiopia, Peru, Philippines, Vietnam, as well as Kenya. And that is the focus today of the webinar, to take a look at the aligning the county integrated development plans and the National Climate Action Plan in Kenya. And we're going to focus on 2 counties, on Nyamira County and West Pokot County. Next slide here. So the focus of the overall project here of Mobilizing Investment is really looking at how to support public actors and the private sector to create these favorable conditions for financing and investing in NDC implementation. Now, among the various components of this multinational project is this learning theme on integrated governance. And what we're focused on here is gaining insights to better understand how governance can improve investments and the transformative investments into NDCs. So we've gone ahead and taken a look at 3 very distinctive country scenarios with the intent to map the climate governance landscape and understand these unique capacity and coordination challenges. And this is important because there's opportunities, of course, for this economic and human development everywhere. But these favorable conditions, how to move forward, is very different, not only between countries, but also within the same country. And we can go ahead and jump slides here. So in Peru, the case was really looking at the Ministry of Environment launched this strategic initiative to design and build 31 landfills across the country that was nationally debt financed by international development banks. And now that is shifted to the local governance to manage and operate profitably these institutions. And those links are there on your screen that look at the institutional mapping report, the consultation of local experts with the 9 different communities, different focus spotlight interviews we have on the communities. We can jump forward here. Also at the Philippines, very recently, we've completed working with the local governance units and understanding how, when in April 2019, the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act was signed into law, and looking at the challenges that the local governance units have on top of the other local climate change action plans and other infrastructure priorities, how they begin to support and accelerate investment in the energy efficiency and conservation space. And again, this follows our program of doing an institutional climate governance mapping report at a high level, then the domestic technical consultation here with the, I believe, 14 local governance units, and some more spotlight interviews. And then next slide. And today here, our focus is on Kenya, of course, where we have produced the institutional mapping report, which is available here at this link. Very recently, with officials from 5 different counties across Kenya, we realized a 2-day interactive discussion on the challenges of aligning the county integrated development plans to the National Climate Change Action Plan. And this report here will be published very shortly. And with that, today we have the opportunity to explore some of the preliminary learnings on this approach in Kenya. And we are joined again by Ms. Carren Nasiaki from West Pokot County and Mr. Anam Moturi of Nyamira County. And with that, I would like to now introduce you to Ms. Edna Odhiambo, who will launch us into the next phase of this presentation. Go ahead and take it away, Edna.
And thank you to all our participants for joining us, as well as to Carren, Nasiaki, and Anam for joining us to give us more perspective on their respective counties. So I think Scott has given us a very good introduction on the work we are doing when it comes to multi-level governance on climate change. And my work today, or rather my presentation today, will just zero in a bit on what we were able to find out during the institutional mapping, and more importantly, our discussions that we had during the domestic technical consultation. Next slide, please. So allow me perhaps to start with a very brief outline on what multi-level governance in Kenya looks like. So because I have 10 minutes, I will not go too much into detail, but I hope that I'll be able to give you a concise overview. So the climate change legislative framework in Kenya is a very rich one, very interesting. We have a constitution guaranteeing the right to a clean and healthy environment. And then we have various legislations. We have a Climate Change Act, actually one of the few countries in the world to specifically legislate on climate change. And the Climate Change Act basically creates certain institutions that we look at while exploring the different actors. We have a National Climate Change Action Policy. We are currently using the 2018 to 2022 National Climate Change Action Plan. And we have an adaptation plan. We have a national climate change response strategy that then informed these plans that we are using. So there's quite a bit of legislative framework that we are using as a country. And we also have a devolved governance system in Kenya. So we have a national level of government, and we have 47 counties, which are sub-national levels of government. Now, when it comes to multi-level governance on climate change, the role of counties definitely cannot be understated. The reason why we say this is because the county government has certain pertinent functions to climate change action. When you read the 4th schedule of the Constitution, you see that our counties are responsible for matters agriculture, air pollution, environment. So quite a bit of activities there where dealing with climate change then becomes so important. And the counties have also been specifically mandated to mainstream climate change into planning, budgeting, and implementation processes under the Climate Change Act. So it was a very, it gave us a very, interesting place to begin to start exploring how counties are going about mainstreaming climate change into their county integrated development plans as a means of achieving the Kenyan nationally determined contribution, which is embodied under our National Climate Change Action Plan. Next slide, please. So there were certain questions we were asking ourselves while we were doing the institutional mapping report, as well as the domestic technical consultation. The first thing is, why are the county integrated development plans so important in driving climate action? The reason why the county integrated development plans really will determine whether counties get it right in terms of climate action is because legally, there's no spending that can be done in counties outside the county integrated development plans. These are plans that normally run for a period of 5 years. So we currently have counties are currently using the 2018-2022 county integrated development plans. This is the second time that counties have formulated county integrated development plans. And in these plans, they basically give out their projections on, the spending they would like to do, the projects they would like to engage in, their priority sectors, and all sorts of things. So really no spending can be done outside the CIDPs. So even when we talk about climate action in the counties, it's important that, of course, we see what is actually in these documents. So we began asking ourselves, what are some of the barriers that, stunt alignment of the county integrated development plans to the National Climate Change Action Plan? Because as I've mentioned, the National Climate Change Action Plan embodies, Kenya's nationally determined contribution, which ideally should be a culmination of what all counties are supposed to be doing in terms of climate action, which will then help Kenya achieve her target of reducing greenhouse emissions by 30% below 2030 levels, below business as usual by 2030. Now, we also began exploring what support then can be leveraged across various governance levels to support effective development of climate smart indicators in the CIDPs. Next slide, please. So yes, I know this picture can be a bit intimidating, but I will take you through it and we'll be able to see just the web of how different actors are interacting. And this will also give us some answers or pointers to the questions I have just mentioned regarding, CIDPs being aligned to the National Climate Change Action Plan. So perhaps, I hope all of you can see me pointing. I'll begin at the top here with the National Climate Change Council. The National Climate Change Council is an institution established under the Climate Change Act. Now, this council has the main mandate of mainstreaming climate change at all government levels and to approve and oversee implementation of the National Climate Change Action Plan, as well as administer the Climate Change Fund. So this really should be the institution nationally in Kenya driving mainstreaming, whether it's at the national level or at the county level. It's very interesting to see that the composition of the National Climate Change Council is very diverse. It's very cross-sectoral in order to ensure that all actors are well represented in this council. We have Cabinet Secretary in charge of environment as a member, and their work is to formulate the National Climate Change Action Plan every 5 years. We have the Climate Change Directorate, which is basically the secretariat of the National Climate Change Council, the technical arm, giving us all the information and the scientific know-how on how to draft the National Climate Change Action Plan every 5 years. We also have the Cabinet Secretary from Treasury and Planning as a member of the National Climate Change Action Plan. Understandably so, because when we talk about climate change action, we have to talk about money, we have to talk about budgets, we have to talk about plans. So it's important that the CS Treasury and Planning is a member of the Climate Change Council. We also have we have National Treasury Planning Department. So Treasury is divided into, the finance side, and we also have the planning side, who is a member of the National Climate Change Council. We have the Council of Governors, being members of the National Climate Change Council. The Council of Governors is the representative of counties at this council. So they are there to ensure that the interests of counties are represented. They have functions of capacity building counties on matters climate change. And they also have a mandate to ensure that they are sort of acting as a resource center to counties, having information on what different counties are doing, how we can borrow best case practices from one another as counties. We have private sector being represented and the National Climate Change Council. Of course, understandably so. It's important that, even as we talk about climate action, we are including other actors apart from government actors. The role of private finance cannot be understated in achieving climate goals. So it's important that we also have representation from the private sector. They have a big role to play in terms of achieving some of our climate goals. Sometimes they're the ones who are perpetrators of some of these actions that lead to greenhouse gas emissions, but also they have a very important role to play to ensure that they green their businesses and industries and, give us those innovations and technologies we need to achieve our climate goals. We also have representation from academia being members of the council, giving us the latest information and research and all the best evidence, within the country on matters climate change. We have civil society organizations being represented, always agitating for the people in the margins, ensuring that, the voice of the people is heard and represented. And we also have the cabinet secretary in charge of environment as a member here of, sorry. That's actually me overstepping. There is the county governments here. I want to break it down a bit to explain to you how it works and how, their role feeds into what is going on under the National Climate Change Council. So under the county governments, we have these key actors who are dealing with the mainstreaming of climate change. We have the county executive in charge of planning. We have the county executive in charge of finance. We, of course, have the county executive in charge of environment. All of these actors have key mandates when it comes to mainstreaming climate change into the county integrated development plans. The county executive in charge of environment, of course, has that mandate of selecting priority areas, identifying the right kind of projects when it comes to matters climate change, and ensuring that they have direct contact with the CEC planning to ensure that this is fed into the county integrated development plans. Of course, the county executive in charge of finance is the one dealing with resource mobilization for climate action at the county level. I think I have mentioned probably all the actors who are part of the National Climate Change Council, and you can see that all of them have such a key role to play when it comes to mainstreaming. Allow me still to use this diagram to begin to point out some of the challenges that we saw. So, and particularly where I have scribbled some things in green, which I'll give more light to. So when it comes to the National Climate Change Council, there are various challenges that are being faced. The National Climate Change Council, albeit being established under the Climate Change Act, it's yet to be operational because of pending litigation challenging the composition of the council. So as we speak, we are yet to have any, formal sitting of the National Climate Change of the National Climate Change Council to undertake its work on mainstreaming. That is yet to be done, and it's definitely slowing down mainstreaming activities because they are the ones mandated with approving and overseeing implementation of the National Climate Change Action Plan. So this, of course, directly affects the work of the Cabinet Secretary Environment. It affects the work of the Climate Change Directorate. We just basically see a ripple effect of the National Climate Change Council not yet, formally sitting. When it comes to for example, some of the challenges that are being experienced even under the Climate Change Directorate is because the Climate Change Council is yet to be constituted, all the draft, or rather all the guidelines that have been developed by the Climate Change Directorate on matters mainstreaming, instructing what state departments should do, what county governments should do in terms of mainstreaming, remain draft guidelines. Because we need the council to formally sit to approve these guidelines for them to be released now to the different parties that need it. So you can definitely see another challenge there. We have another issue when it comes also to academia. We are talking about them being able to produce latest research and evidence. A lot of universities do face resource constraints, to get real-time data, to get to get that primary research. It's really a constraint for quite a number of academics. I mean, sometimes they do have those opportunities, but not all the time. And this definitely has effects on the kind of research, or you'd say the quality of research they're able to present. Of course, when it comes to the state departments have been mandated to establish climate change units. And these climate change units, of course, are supposed to be supposed to be coordinating matters climate change within different departments. So for example, agriculture to have its own climate change unit, and this climate change unit should be having direct coordination and consultation with the Climate Change Directorate. Yet again, in some state departments, we do have operational climate change units, but not in all. And we do have the, the challenge of, do they have enough data? Is the data adequate? Is it well updated? And also, are these state departments feeding the county governments with latest data, so that the county governments are then able to develop climate smart indicators in their CIDPs? Because these county governments are relying on data from state departments in consultation with the Climate Change Directorate in order to feed what county governments should do. So for example, if we have the goal of ensuring 10% forest cover under our National Climate Change Action Plan, it is the data from state departments that should be able to inform various county governments. What does this 10% forest cover look like for you? For example, in Nyamira County, maybe Nyamira should be able to achieve 70% forest cover. West Pokot should have maybe 30% forest cover, in order for all these 47 counties to feed into that general goal of 10% under the National Climate Change Action Plan. Then during the domestic technical consultation, we had such rich discussions with the counties, and these were some of the things that were able to come out. So for county governments, it was clear that mainstreaming is a very arduous task that takes a lot of resources, time-wise, finance-wise, human resource. And there was a resounding, feeling amongst all the counties that we had there, that climate change units do need to be developed at the county level. These climate change units should mirror what perhaps the climate change units would be doing at the state department levels, or a sort of climate change directorate at a county level. Why? These climate change units would then have, enough human resource, technical capacity to be able to undertake this mainstreaming function by coordinating with the different departments to ensure that they have the latest information, the priority areas of each department, and then they're able to synthesize these departments to ensure that they can come up with climate smart indicators, which are then included in the CIDPs, and the counties can then comfortably implement these projects. So of course, when you're talking about climate change units, it means we need to capacity build counties in what does a good climate change unit look like, what's going to be its mandate, how do you ensure that this unit is undertaking its function to the best way possible. So another thing that came up when we were talking with counties was the idea of counties being able to have coordination within themselves, so intra-county coordination. At the beginning of my presentation, I talked a lot about all these web and how all of these, are coordinating national, county, but at the county level, it's important to also see that, counties are really craving for coordination within their own departments and at the county level. So there's the idea that, there's a lot of working in silos, and this is mainly informed by a lot of county departments being understaffed. So there really isn't time to begin, coordinating and seeing what other county departments are doing. But there was definitely that, agreement that county governments do need to begin coordinating within themselves, and also perhaps the climate change unit could help for more smooth coordination, between different departments within the county, and also the relationship between national and county level. Next slide, please. So allow me just now to reiterate some of the challenges I've mentioned. I did feel it was important to use the diagram to talk about them, but one thing you've noticed that has come out is the lack of data. A lot of counties are struggling to develop climate smart indicators in their county integrated development plans because they don't have adequate data to be able to develop baselines, to know, what should we do in the agriculture sector? How do we narrow down what climate smart agriculture projects to undertake? Forestry, water. So they do need data. A lot of this data should still come from the state departments. They should still feed the county governments, perhaps, of course, through the Council of Governors on the latest data. Another thing I've mentioned is siloed approaches, not only within county government, but also at the national government level. There's the idea that, people need to work more together. Of course, we have recently seen, and it's quite commendable, we have recently seen State Department of Planning holding hands with Climate Change Directorate to be able to develop some guidelines. So slowly by slowly, we are seeing more and more of that coordination that's much needed. Financial resource constraints cannot be understated, not only in the climate sector, but even the climate change units we are talking about. Well, of course, the capacity building, the software, or rather, how it's going to look like, how do we ensure we have that technical capacity and expertise is something that will call for a lot of resources. But most importantly, even the climate action that is going to be included in the CIDPs will definitely need financial resources attached to it. Human resource constraints, I think it was definitely mentioned at the domestic technical consultation that counties do need more human resources deployed if we are going to have functional climate change units undertaking mainstreaming, spearheading it. It's definitely something that is needed. Politics, politics is everywhere. I don't want to get into too much details, but there was the idea that even at the county level, there needs to be understanding between political mandate and technical mandate. So, for example, the county executive commissioners understanding their role as political heads and allowing the directors to undertake their technical role as the head of those departments. So there needs to be more fleshing out of that and basically just understanding the different roles. But it cannot be understated that political support is so important, whether at the national level or at the county level, in driving these climate smart projects. Of course, bureaucracies was something that came out, in particular, sometimes the relationship between donors and how they are undertaking their mandate with counties. Sometimes it's felt that, donors don't necessarily follow the procedures that have been laid out in terms of co-opting the Council of Governors before they approach counties. So the Council of Governors sometimes struggles to know what is going on in these 47 counties. It's important for them because they have that mandate to be a sort of resource center for counties. So it's important for all stakeholders while dealing with counties to co-opt the Council of Governors, for example. But the question would be, why do people sometimes want to bypass these structures? So that's what needs to be addressed. Do we perhaps need to make a more enabling environment? Do we need to make it more quick, more smooth for people to be able to co-opt counties? Next slide, please. So some of the recommendations that came out was generally just, I think, as I've mentioned, establishing of the climate change units would be something that would really go a long way in helping counties mainstream climate change. And these climate change units should be helping as a level of coordination. It should be helping also as an institution that can receive finance, that can apply for different forms of climate finance within counties. It's definitely known that certain counties have made strides in establishing county climate change funds and establishing some form of climate change units. So it's important to sort of pick learnings from them and see how we can be able to, scale this up to different counties and strengthen these institutions. Another thing was the establishment of central data information sharing within counties and coordination with national entities. Again, I think it speaks to the idea of moving away from silos and adopting a coordinated approach to ensure that, you know, this information is being shared in a timely and efficient manner, such that the people in charge of formulating the CIDPs have the information they need. Another thing that was mentioned was, how do we leverage the power of regional blocks? So there are certain regional blocks within the 47 counties. We have the Lake region, counties, we have the Northern Rift, we have the Central block, we have the one at the coastal region. So the thing was, how do we strengthen these regional blocks beyond even trade blocks? We can look at them also as ecological blocks, because quite a number of them sometimes face similar climate change challenges. How do we come together as regional blocks to ensure that we are harnessing the resources that we have? We are pulling together even in terms of perhaps applying for certain climate finance opportunities. So that really came out strongly, and it seems like a very interesting area to be explored. Another thing would be, how do we align funding to timely climate change action? So this is definitely now my last point. I've really gone beyond my allocated time. So there's the idea that, how do we ensure that finance comes at the right time? So sometimes the problem is not only inadequate finance, sometimes it's actually finance, but the budgeting periods do not, so to speak, correlate with when the finance is needed. So for example, you know, there's a climate emergency, and, you know, by the time you're getting the money, you really don't have much time. You probably have 2 months or so, and the financial year is wrapping up, and you need to surrender back the money. So there definitely needs to be that coordination in terms of, how do we ensure we are, even within counties, we are channeling that finance in a timely manner to deal with climate change action. I do hope that has given you a sort of sense on what we are able to find out, and this list is definitely not exhaustive. We just picked on some of the issues, and perhaps today, since we have two counties with us, we definitely thought it would be important just to focus on some of the things that they brought out. Thank you, and perhaps I can pass it on to Anam to take it from here.
Edna, just real quickly before Anam joins us, some of the questions coming in around your challenges that you listed the political challenges. Could you expound a little bit on the challenges in the National Climate Change Council and why it's not yet functional or operational? Is this purely a political obstacle?
Well, allow me to comment on it to the extent of what we know about the court case that was challenging the constitution of the Climate Change Council. It was basically challenging the manner in which certain individuals were nominated to be part of the Climate Change Council. So it was challenging the representation. How did we get to perhaps say that this particular person will be the representative for the civil society organization? So as long as there's that case in court, then the council cannot legally function, because they've not been given the go-ahead. There was also the questioning on how it was passed, because there are procedures on how it should be on how the nominees, you know, should be tabled before Parliament, vetted, and then agreed upon. So, you know, there's definitely some politics going on there, and as long as we don't have clearance, so to speak, you know, from the courts now, then the council will not yet be functional.
Thanks, Edna. Anam, welcome. The floor is yours.
Hello, viewers and listeners. Good afternoon. I've identified some areas which I have to talk to about the climate change investment priorities of the Nyamira County Integrated Development Plan. That's why I want to center my views. So you can move the slide. Move the slide, please. Yes, I've categorized this into two parts. The contents are CIDP 2018-2022 major interests. So I'll be focusing on the major interests alone. And finally, I'll talk about the institutional framework. Go down. in these areas, I've identified registration as an issue, wealth creation through waste recycling, food security and nutrition, forestation and reforestation, green energy, water security, human health, climate change are the operators we go by. Next slide. Now, in Nyamira climate change registration, I need to mention at this juncture that we are in the process of having the environmental policy, which is in progress and are waiting adoption at the county assembly. Now, down to that, we'll have the draft climate change policy, which we are working on, and this will give us the impetus of working on the climate change. Establishment, so establishment of climate change units is being considered by the cabinet. That's where we are. And then the institutions, as usual, will provide the legal backing for grants and investment entry points. Next slide, please. Now, waste can be turned to be wealth. So in Nyamira, we don't want to talk about waste, but we want to talk about riches. Now, per day, in Nyamira County, we produce about 50 tons per day, which will bring us to 18,000 tons. Now, this garbage is turned to wealth. As we see down, the county will be empowered. Now, in the CIDP 2018-2022, we outline the program of establishment of energy generation and that harness industrial and household waste material into energy sources, providing electricity. Now, here we are saying that the waste which we produce can be converted into energy. Now, in this regard, the waste I'm talking about, the household waste, industrial waste, like coffee factories and the rest. Here we have got a challenge of separating waste, because that's where the starting point is. And in this case, if the waste is sorted out, then we'll have things like metals having been used in incinerators, be converted into other products, and the biodegradable materials can be used for organic fertilizer. We realize that in organic fertilizer, we need to move from there. Now, also from waste of livestock and garbage, we can have biogas. Biogas can be for use, which will make us not use the electric power. Now, in waste recycling, this is an area which has not been tapped as far as investment of the county is concerned. Next, please, right? Now, we have identified another area as food security and nutrition. We realize that in Nyamira, of course, development is very fast because of land pressure. And when people develop, they interfere with the natural resources. Now, down somewhere, I'm having a slide where we are doing quarrying, and quarrying degrades the land. Brick making is another commercial activity which is, goes on in Nyamira. All this influences a lot of land degradation and environmental degradation. Because of productive land shortage, the CIGP proposes land management practices that will utilize the resource space and at the same time optimize output. Remember, we cannot stop development, but the development must be sustainable. Agroforestry can be practiced by ensuring the cultivation of food tree in farm lands. Of course, agroforestry, in this case, we mean getting planting trees which are fruit friendly, which give us fruit. And by having the fruits, we're increasing the food value, the nutrition. Now we identified fruits like avocado, guava, mangoes, oranges, among other fruit trees. And when this is grown, we realize that it enhances food security. Next move. Now, among other crops, plants which we need to plant is those ones for animal feeds. The animal feeds like Ariandra, which is for the livestock, we can also use it as a control of soil erosion. The county can harness national government agreement with China and the Europe on large-scale production of Hass avocado, hence increase of smaller, older farmer income. We realize that avocado is now a booming business, and in our small farmlands, we can grow these avocados. Agroforestry also contributes to our national government policy of 10% forest cover. At this juncture, may I mention that in Nyamira, the forest cover is at the moment 25%. Now that's a big contribution to the national policy. Now, promotion of diversification as a way of moving from outdated cultural practices. Remember, our cultural food, people of Nyamira, is ugari. But we need to move from this scenario because the cash crop maize has been invested with a lot of rockers, not rockers, but other animals. And therefore, if we continue like this, we will not have food. That's why we have said that we diversify crop farming, like we grow millet, we grow potatoes, and the like. Now, in this case also, we have concentrated on greenhouse farming because we cannot always rely on rainfall. We work for greenhouse crop model because this does not need any rain. Next. Next, please. Now, afforestation and reforestation. The CIDP of Nyamira proposes a program of planting diverse species of trees on hilltops in order to control soil erosion. Now, in this regard, I need to mention that like the main source of rivers, like the Wuncha, which runs from Nyamira down to the lake, if you observe it, as it goes down, it keeps turning red. That means it has carried a lot of soil from the highlands to the lake, and this is impacts negatively. Reducing deforestation and degradation is another cause that we have to work on. Green development mechanism result in a net greenhouse gas removal. Now, in green, we mean that the greenhouse gases emissions, if we plant these trees, it is a result of removal of the carbon from the atmosphere. We remember, of course, this one is brought about by other developed countries, but we have the NDC, and Nyamira has got to contribute some to the NDC by carbon sinks. Now, we support the supplement of nurseries by youth groups and promotion of trees, planting in schools, colleges, and open spaces in urban centers. This has been done, and this is why we are having a forest cover of over 25%. Now, we need to do contours along our slope farms. Remember, Nyamira is a slopey place, and therefore, any rain which comes, it goes with the soil. Now, by containing this, we need to have smart erosion technologies whereby we have to do plant crops to make contours. Next. Now, this an area where I was talking about land degradation. You can see people quarrying. The place is green, but the quarrying has destroyed the ecosystem, and therefore the land has been degraded, and at the end of the day, we'll have no food, we'll have a lot of deposited water which can bring diseases, and we need to work on this. That's what the slide is talking about. This is not the only one. We also have the brick making. which has caused a lot of havoc as far as regards the climate change. Next. Now, in water security, we have realized that the eucalyptus trees, which are planted in the riparian lands, have made the area, the rivers dwindle, and even the wetlands go dry. Now, the droughts of 2017-2018, where we saw there was no water, and there were a lot of conflicts, animal conflict and human conflict because of no water. Now, even the people have realized that the eucalyptus, which is a heavy feed of water, is the main cause. I need to mention and congratulate His Excellency the Governor of Nyamira, Order John Nyagarama, for having come up with an executive order of removing all trees from the riparian land. The trees, the riparian, the eucalyptus trees, so that we can plant with other friendly trees. The friendly trees which we need to plant is the bamboo and other indigenous trees. These conserve water, and also they do water recharge, which can be of great value to the people of Nyamira. Now, this is a concept which has been accepted by the public. Now, local and external investors, we are saying, can take advantage of this so that they can facilitate in needed seedlings. Now, we have policy on water harvesting to maximize rainwater and storage for commercial and household use. This means, and building which is coming up, there is a policy that it must have a proper reserve for water harvesting. Now, changing rainfall patterns call for alternative sources, the borehole drilling, which we are doing, the spring water protection, and also we do the dams. Next slide, please. Clean energy. Nyamira is resource rich in terms of renewable energy. This can be harnessed by establishment home solar facilities and provide lighting and heating services. The home solar is what we have in the CIDP, and we also have the street lighting, solar street lighting. This one will complement in the reduction of greenhouse gases emissions, because minus these will have people going to the forest, cutting the rocks of trees for energy. So we have embarked on the solar lighting, the clean energy from the usual electricity that we have. The biogas from the livestock is recommendable for having a biogas. A biogas is easily used in the homes. Next slide. Next slide, please. Health, human health. Now we realize that the clean environment contributes to reduction of diseases causing chemicals and microorganisms. And stagnant water breeds mosquitoes, hence causing malaria to citizens. Effective climate change reduces medical expenses. Remember, as I said in the grand degradation where the quarrying was done, if water is stagnant, there is a breeding ground. Now, use of wood fuel also related diseases, and that's why we are working on biogas and solar generated sources. Now, also remember that the garbage is not well managed. The rain takes to the back to the soil, to the rivers, and this can cause cholera. Next slide. Now, information services. We used to have the way people used to know that now rains are coming. The people could focus by seeing the movement of birds, by the ants shedding leaves, ants moving from one season to another season, from one place to another place. All these were indicators of the rainfall. We had traditional rainmakers, but these things are of the past. And since they are of the past, we are talking about Nyamira having an information, climate change information services, which meteorological department, which could be telling when the rains are coming. This can give a timely and accurate information on the rain patterns. At the moment, we rely on the meteorological department, which is in Kisi County. In Kisi County and this Nyamira County, the information may not be very accurate. So we look forward for having maybe 3 or so meteorological departments in Nyamira County. Next, please.
Carren, there's many people on the call here who are very interested in West Pokot County, so please take your time. We have all the time we need on this call. It is being recorded, so if anyone needs to drop off, please do so with the confidence that you will receive a recording of this complete webinar later. So Carren, Nasiaki Kirungu is the head of County Land Reclamation Department in West Pokot County. Carren, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Mr. Scott, and thank you so much, and welcome to the presentation. I am Carren Nasiaki Kirungu, as you've heard. I'll present on the investment priorities of the CIDP, how they are linked to the National Climate Change Action Plan in West Pokot County. Next slide, please. West Pokot County is, as you can see from the map, it's 74.5% arid and semi-arid, and it covers 9,169 square kilometers, of which only 41% is arable, according to the government, according to those documents in 2013. But irrigation is used by only 1% of the households. Next slide. So I'm going to talk about climate change and land degradation in West Pokot County. Can you hear me?
Wonderfully.
Oh, that's nice. The county is 74.5% arsal with a forest cover of only 3.9%. This is a fragile ecosystem with low investment in environmental goods and services. And this increases the county's vulnerability to climate change. And according to the records that we have, 2016, the poverty levels were at 57.4%. And the livelihood economy is highly pastoral and dependent on natural resources such as pasture, water, fuelwood, timber, fruit trees, which are sensitive to climate conditions. Next slide, please. Many areas of West Pokot County, the lands are rapidly degrading due to climate change and anthropogenic factors. The effects of overgrazing, deforestation, and unsustainable agricultural practices are amplified by the entrenched drought and flood cycles. These climatic conditions are in turn affecting human activity. For example, the severe drought drives overgrazing and pushes farmers to shift to riparian cultivation, resulting in these areas being prone to soil erosion. You see, like, because of the drought, many people have encroached the riparian areas, and we find that the rivers are no longer safe. They have a lot of siltation, a lot of soil erosion, and the water sources are not good quality because of riparian cultivation. This is pushed by human activity as well as climate change as a result of the droughts. And due to increased economic pressures in many households, many households are burning and trading in charcoal and wood. Now, this is leading to the increased deforestation. Then we have loss of tree cover, which renders more soils more vulnerable to intense rainfall events. This, coupled with overgrazing and increased pressure on the land and deforestation, is leading to massive scale erosion, both surface soil and deep gullies. We have all types of soil erosion in West Pokot County as a result of all this. The long rain season in the region traditionally begins in March through to August, but this reliable rainfall patterns are no longer there because of climate change. An example is the 2019, last year in December, where the rains were delayed until around May, June there, followed by very short rains between October. And then in December, in West Pokot, we had sudden rainfall, torrential rainfall, which were followed by flash floods. And this resulted in many landslides, especially in West Pokot, Central Pokot, West Pokot County in Central Pokot sub-county, where we had many people losing their lives and their homes, together with their properties. So most people lost their means of livelihoods, and the roads and the bridges were destroyed, especially in Pokot Central, last year in December. Next slide, please. Incremental advancing land degradation is also driven by climate change, resulting in lower cropping potential and loss of other ecosystem services. Severe cascading indirect impacts create issues of food security, which in turn contributes to the breakup of family issues and puts pressure on education, family units, and puts pressure on education and health services. Understandably, these stresses result in increased conflict among neighboring communities. So we have our neighboring communities fighting mostly because of pasture and water, between the Marakwet and the Turkana and the Karamoja and the Sebei, for instance, and between counties. So West Pokot County and Turkana County, Elgeyo Marakwet and West Pokot County, Baringo and West Pokot County, and mostly between Kenya and Uganda. Although Kenya, Uganda, the problem is that you take our livestock there during dry season, most people move their livestock to Uganda because of those climate change impacts. This is an example of what happened in December. This is a place in Pokot Central where we had landslides, and many people lost their livelihoods and their lives as a result of the landslide in last year, December. Next slide. So these are some of the impacts of land degradation as a result of climate change, coupled with anthropogenic factors. One of them is severe soil erosion. An example is Embassy Primary School, where the land is around 60 acres, but it's highly degraded such that the classrooms and the dormitories are almost being washed away by the soil erosion. And as you can see, the soil erosion is deeper than, you can see the roots are exposed, and most schools are like this. We have many schools, and even there is a health center in Arpolo with the same issues of soil erosion. Next slide. This is flooding. So these are the flooding that was witnessed. It's just an example of what is happening in the county. There are many such instances that happens. Next slide. Next slide. Okay. So this is how our CIDP is linked with other plans. Our CIDP is linked to the Kenya Vision 2030, a Sustainable Development Goals, Agenda 2063. It's also linked to the sectoral and spatial and urban plans, and the medium-term plan and annual development plan. Sector development plan feed. Sectoral spatial plan feed into the sectoral and spatial and urban plans fit into the sector stroke department plans, which inform the annual development plan. and which also informed, from here, it informs the program-based budget, which also linked to the final work plans. So our work plans come from here. Next slide. So a CIDP linkage with National Climate Change Action Plan. Whereas Pokot County CIDP is indirectly linked to the National Climate Change Action Plan. However, it's linked to many other plans as illustrated in the previous slide. However, so there is need to directly link it to the National Climate Change Action Plan. I think this is what we are envisioning, that we'll be able to link it. Through it's indirectly linked, but we can work on it to make sure that it's linked to the National Climate Change Action Plan. Through the 2018 to 2022 CIDP, many projects addressing climate change impacts have been identified and documented. However, there exist challenges in fully implementing the priority areas. So we have many projects already that are in the CIDP. They might not be directly linked to the National Climate Change Action Plan, but they are indirectly linked to that. So we already have them in the CIDP, and we captured as many as we could. But now we have challenges in implementing the priority areas, because now if we don't implement, and the 5 years might be over before we fully implement what is in the CIDP. Next slide, please. Governance challenges as far as national, as far as climate change is concerned. One, the climate change policy and bill has not been domesticated by the County Assembly, although we have plans underway to domesticate it. Currently, we have an organization known as Mercycots that are sponsoring the climate change policy. It's still underway. Then we have low funding on climate smart initiative. The funding are usually very insufficient. We have untimely or late funding hindering successful implementation of projects that depend on the weather or the climate. For instance, if we have our money for tree planting, if it comes in June, then we are supposed to plant our trees in March, April, May, because of the rains. So you find that if the funds come in June, then you're not able to plant the trees on time. That's just one of the examples. Most of the time we stay in the office for long periods without funding, and then funding comes towards the end of the financial year. So it's a challenge. We have uncoordinated efforts among the key players. Yes, we have NGOs doing their work, government doing their work. Even within governments, we have very little collaborations within the key departments, within the key players, as far as climate change governance is concerned. We also have inadequate knowledge among the key actors and stakeholders on mainstreaming the climate change agenda and the harmonized climate change indicators. Especially the harmonized climate change indicators, the knowledge has not fully been disseminated to all the key players. And you also have issues of political interference. For instance, the MCS will want to have a project that will fit their political ambitions. But this one can also, it's a challenge, and at the same time, it's a challenge, but at the same time, it can also be an area where we can develop, because if we train our MCS, our politicians about climate change, they will not necessarily interfere in some of the projects. In any way, they will support. Then we have inadequate dissemination of the relevant information to the stakeholders. The information is there, but it has not been fully disseminated. Then we have insufficient funds for mainstreaming climate change in the county. since it's usually not factored in the budget. So we don't have a fund like this is climate change. Okay, for example, if you have a water pan, this is a climate change program because it's an adaptation, climate change adaptation. You have whatever projects, but at least we need to have a kitty where we identify the projects that will be able to roll out and be able to effectively combat climate change. So we have insufficient funding because there are some projects that we wish that they were funded to be able to mitigate and adapt. So that you can be able to adapt. But, sorry, I can hear some noise. So that you can be able to adapt, but not yet. Next slide. Funding. Next, I'm going to talk about the funding challenges.
Carren, it seems that your microphone has disconnected. We can no longer hear you. But by luck, Anam has joined us at the same time. So counting on the agility of the facilitators, Anam, several questions came in during your absence, and I'm wondering if you could reflect on them. And the first one is really about the use of data in the county of Nyamira. How are you referenced several statistics on forestation, on erosion. Could you talk a little bit about the use of spatial planning and data and where that's generated in the county of Nyamira? Anam?
Sorry, you lost me.
Oh, hi, Carren. Anam, I'm going to ask you to hold that. Carren, could you please go ahead and just continue where you left off?
Yes, sorry for the delays.
No trouble.
Network issues, but I'm back now. So as I said, okay. However, one of the main challenges the county has to solve is delayed disbursement of public funds, and coordinated financial disbursement complicates the implementation of smart climate projects and make it difficult to plan for harmonized proactive approaches. Another challenge is insufficient funding. Many projects and important opportunities are identified and aligned with the CIDP and the annual development plan, but only about 20 projects are implemented in a year due to many competing priorities and shortage of funds. Noting that the responsible ministry, which is the Ministry of Water, Environment and Resources, where the department falls, is also responsible for water-related projects and is under financial pressure, as well as being oversubscribed with requests for capacity building and funds. The budget for land reclamation department can go as low as 1 million, for instance, for one financial year like this year, which is extremely limiting. For example, it creates basic transportation challenges in the department and makes it very difficult to properly supervise the implementation of projects. Next slide, please. West Pokot County designed funding challenges for adaptation efforts on the ground. Why is my internet unstable? Sorry.
We can hear you okay, Carren.
Okay, West Pokot County designed a drought-resilient solution to plant and harvest pasture in the degraded areas and store the hay for pastoral communities during the dry season. But inadequate hay storage facilities precluded the strategy from being realized. Access to a mower and baler for harvesting have posed a serious challenge. Currently, the county relies on the livestock improvement project in Naskuta region, which is in West Pokot region, to assist with the necessary mower and baler for harvesting. But this creates delays for up to 2 years, and this inefficiency makes proper harvesting a problem. Okay, severe gully erosion is becoming common in public lands, and there are several schools and health centers in self-services infrastructure that are threatened by the advance of gullies towards their foundations. Like now, this is what we call the tragedy of the commons. Most of the lands in West Pokot have no titles and they're still communal lands. So we have a lot of degradation happening because of soil erosion, factored by deforestation and overgrazing. Those are the drivers. There are several instances where the county has identified opportunity to plant pasture and reverse gully degradation, but cannot access funding to do so. In the current financial year, only one gully control project will go ahead, funded by the Land Reclamation Department at Mboasis Primary School, where 60 acres around the school are riddled with unsafe gullies. This is one of the schools that I showed you in the other slide, the photo that I showed you. The project falls within the CIDP pipeline, and despite the critical importance to address this issue or face the consequence of loss of building infrastructure, this year's funding will be insufficient to adequately address the issue. It suffices to say that there are a myriad of interventions that have been identified across the county, many included within the CIDP, which await finance. When sustainable land reclamation solutions are so difficult to get off the ground, people become more concerned with the immediate priorities, such as sinking boreholes for access to water. So next I'm going to talk about the integrated solutions that are required. One of them is building technical capacity and awareness of officials, which is important because land degradation is a complex interdisciplinary subject and requires a myriad of complementary interventions to address and reverse. Members of the County Assembly, who are also known as MCAs, thus benefit from greater technical understanding. Communities will also benefit from education and capacity building on the impacts of climate change and interrelated causes of land degradation and opportunities for adaptation. However, implementation projects and capacity building priorities can compete with one another. While there are strong benefits to capacity building in the department, there is urgent demand for critical infrastructure to improve resilience on the ground and realize immediate direct benefits. For example, noting that the proposal for faster storage in West Pokot County was hampered by lack of finance for storage facilities, mowers, and balers. So we need funding on such issues. Next, another solution can be raising awareness at national level, could also assist in the process of policy adjustment where required and enable the public expenditures and investments necessary to make land degradation intervention strategies more effective and transformative. Opportunities for improved integration on climate governance. A clear climate action policy could provide a solution for West Pokot County. to guide the county towards achieving national targets and in turn, generating local benefits. To date, the climate policy and bill has not been adopted by the county assembly. Broader solutions such as funds for mainstreaming climate change in the counties have not been factored. As I said, we have, this one is underway, although it's not yet adopted. The climate change policy and bill is underway, although it's not, has not been adopted.
Carren,
Yes.
one question. Once you're able to have that legislation adopted, will this improve your coordination across departments?
Yes.
So the land degradation department will have more interaction with agriculture and other departments in the county?
Yes, it will. Because now once you have a legislation in place, the next thing will be dissemination of the findings. Once you disseminate to others, people will get to learn about that. And then also the county assembly, they'll be able to know that this is something that is there, and most people will have to put money. We have to put funds into that. That one will go a long way.
Yeah, I don't think that when people are discussing about land degradation in the counties, I don't think they understand that the entire budget of your department for the year is only $10,000 US. That's a tremendous limitation.
Yeah, sometimes sometimes because all the money comes to the ministry, and then we have a lot of priorities, and then at the end of the day, most people have issues with the water. They don't have drinking water, and most of the money will go to that, and then we find ourselves not reclaiming our degraded lands. And I feel like, for instance, if we conserve our environment, we can be able to have water. Because now, because of riparian encroachment in riparian areas and such things, and not taking care of our water sources, that's why we have shortage. Now, that's a complex issue that needs capacity building for so many people, because they are not understanding why.
Well, this is precisely one of the questions, Carren, that some of the efforts to control erosion or to implement strategies clearly does require interdepartmental or interdisciplinary strategies. And I guess the highest question for you, so active in the field, is if you are able to obtain this local legislation that improves the coordination of strategies and cooperation between departments, do you believe that this will increase investment in this necessary infrastructure in the county?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
It will.
That's a very clear answer.
It will. It will go a long way.
Please continue with your presentation.
Okay, next slide. What is clear, however, is that greater coordination among key players delivers improved results. For instance, once short-term strategies are put in place to support land recovery through afforestation, pasture, rehabilitation, etc., the Land Reclamation Department seeks to collaborate closely with the Livestock Department to improve breeds and mitigate overstocking and overgrazing, thereby attenuating one of the tangible drivers of land degradation. For instance, when we had the two pioneer projects we had degraded lands in both North and Central Pokot sub-counties. The lands were too degraded and they didn't have any pasture. Even when it rains, the pasture doesn't grow because the grass is not even there. And the lands are degraded. When we reclaimed and planted the pasture, they had a lot of livestock feed, a lot of pasture for their livestock. And we had a lot of trees in those two projects, such that they put their traditional beehives, and they also got a lot of honey out of that. The livestock department, we can collaborate with the livestock department to give those, because these are community projects. They can be able to come up with improved breeds because they already have the feed. And they can also have a water pan for the animals and have improved breeds. And at the end of the day, we have to, it will help to reduce overstocking. We just have a few breeds that can be able to eat very little and not destroy the environment, and at the same time produce a lot of milk and a lot of meat. You know, so like the department will be collaborating, the land reclamation department will be collaborating with the livestock. So some of the projects that coordination, yes, you go to them, you tell them, I'm doing this, we are going to reclaim this land, and you, on the other side, you will be able to help this community improve their breeds, such like.
Carren, some of these ideas you have about hosting technical workshops for the Congress people and the projects that are in place, some of your ideas and collaborating with the livestock department. Do you also share that information back to the national level or to the Council of Governors, or are you only looking inward in West Pokot? If you could talk a little bit about how you share out that information to other counties and also to the national level.
Oh, okay. So this information we have shared internally with the county government. We shared with the governor, we shared with the heads of department, livestock, agriculture, through the various ministries within West Pokot, mostly, but we haven't, we also have written proposals to donors. For example, we have written to European Union on such things, but honestly, we've not shared so much with the national government on that. But I think we can, these are avenues where we can be able to share with them. But we've shared with many partners, with many NGOs, because we meet in very many meetings within the county.
But right now, there's no clear avenues to communicate or share this feedback directly with the Council of Governors or with the national ministry?
With the Council of Governors. Yes, we do. We have the resource mobilization unit. So as a department, we share our views with the resource mobilization unit, which also shares with the Council of Governors on the same. But due to devolution, really this time, counties just work with the Council of Governors directly, mostly.
Okay.
Yes. So, previous slide. Technical workshops for MCS will help sensitize and build understanding on climate change matters and the impacts of and opportunities to control land degradation. I give you an example. We have the World Development Fund, where the MCS have 20 million each financial year. They were MCS members of county assemblies from every ward. They are given 20 million to have development projects for their counties. We go to public participation, and they have a lot of requests to the county for health, for education, for land reclamation, water, and many other things. But at the end of the day, it's the MCS who do the final decision on what the 20 million will do. But now, if we sensitize the MCS on issues of climate change, they will be able to prioritize some of the money and put in under climate change. So, because they have so many competing priorities, but at least if each ward were to allocate some money for climate change adaptation and mitigation, it will have to go a long way. Now we need to educate these members of parliament, county assemblies, so that they can be able to support departments on that. In the short term, in order for West Pokot to attract more public and private investment in the long list of identified climate projects, the projects already included in the CIDPs should then be included in the ADPs, which will help fast-track projects and avoid postponing important projects indefinitely. Because now you have, the CIDP has very many projects that have been identified through the communities, most of them. But every year in, year out, the ADP will have to remove some projects and put others, and we find that very few climate smart projects are put in the ADP's annual development plans. So this one hinders, because it means by after 5 years, most of the projects will not be implemented because of insufficient funding. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you so much for listening attentively. Sorry so much you lost me for some time because of internet issues, but I thank God I was back. Any questions?
Carren, that was wonderful. Thank you. I do want to tell you that last week we had a meeting in West Africa with ministry officials from 15 countries. And I shared with them the example of the mistiming between the allocation of budget in land use and the rainy season and the problems that was causing. And there were 35 light bulbs that went off in the room, and that generated a big, long discussion, and your name was celebrated. So that was a very insightful observation that has traveled far since we met last.
Thank you.
Also, everyone here, the attendees, Carren has also shared her insights in a spotlight interview that's more detailed on West Pokot County that will be published on the South-South-North website here very soon. Anam, have you joined us again? Is your microphone working, Anam? Perhaps not. So, Carren, my friend Ken Andrasco has asked a question here that I think would apply to West Pokot County as well, and that is many of the challenges that you're addressing are a long line of challenges that you're having in erosion and are demanding attention. They are sort of must fix or no regret projects. Could you talk a little bit about preparation of projects? Is there to attract financing? So you said that you've applied for some of these projects to the European Union, to other NGOs. Could you reflect a little bit on, once you identify a challenge such as the erosion near the schools or near the hospitals or the health centers, and then how are the funding proposals put together? And then how do you identify where to send those? Is that now with devolution, are you directly sending those proposals to international sources? Or are there national sources to attend to some of these projects?
Okay. When we identify such problems, mostly they come through the community. They come to the office and they tell us, we have such problems, and we visit the areas and we note the problems. We address first to the county and to the county management, and we try to see if we can secure funds maybe for that financial year or the next financial year to address the problem. If we don't get the funding that we require from the county, then sometimes we address some of the NGOs that work within the county. And most of them, they have strict work plans. So most of them tell us they are not able to fit in, and they are not able to fit in the new project proposal. And then we write proposals once they come through the county or council of governors, and there is a call for proposal. For instance, there was a call for proposal from the European Union, water towers, protection and climate change mitigation and adaptation program. So when we write such a proposal, we make sure that we put as many projects as we can, the ones that have been prioritized in the county. But sometimes such processes take long to receive funding. Like this European Union we've not received the funding. We are still under proposal stage. And we always wait if we can see any donor who has a call for proposal for us to send a proposal to them. If we don't get any donor that we know of, then we just wait. Mostly that's what we do. Yes, can you get me?
Carren, could you also speak a little bit about how the county actually manages data, whether it's spatial planning or the use of satellite maps, as well as any calculation of greenhouse gases? I know that it's still a fresh conversation of how the 30% target is going to be achieved and distributed across the different counties, and that burden to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But how is the county managing this data? Is there a relationship with universities? Is it international groups that are helping you manage the data? What's that process?
No, there isn't clear guidelines on that. Apart from there is only one university that partnered with us, the Eldoret University. They came to us and they partnered with us on some projects on climate change mitigation and land degradation reduction, land reclamation. So they came to us and we partnered with them. But really, we don't have clear avenues to get to the university, apart from those ones that are near us, like Eldoret, who come to us. I think we need to explore that possibility of now collaborating with the universities for that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Carren, very much. And that brings us here to the final part of our webinar. Edna, I'd like to invite you to give us some closing words if you'd like.
Thanks, Scott. I think I don't really have much to say. Carren and Anam have really given us a good context on what's going on in the counties. We are so grateful for the participants who have joined us, and for the questions that you've been channeling in have really enriched our discussions. We definitely hope that as we continue to engage, we will have more viable solutions to increase that coordination between different levels of government and even within national and county government departments. So thank you. We look forward to even your other questions as we end the webinar. Please feel free to send them through. We'll be sharing the presentations as well, and we hope to keep in touch. Thank you.
As well, very soon we will be publishing on the South-South-North site the final report from the technical consultation with the 5 counties. That will all be sent to the participants. So thank you everyone for joining.